It is time to get back to Halloween. That's prime and proper. They realize the mistakes they made with Halloween 3, and so that's right. It's time to get back to what works, and that is Michael Myers. He is still alive, he is back. So let's get right into it and start looking at our review of Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This movie came out in 1988. And if you have not seen this movie before, please be aware that this review will contain spoilers. So this movie picks up 10 years after Michael's original killing spree on Halloween Day 1978. It is October 30th, 1988, and there's a team from Smith's Grove Sanitarium coming to pick up Michael, who has been at the Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium. They are transferring him back to Smith's Grove. It makes you wonder why they constantly choose to transfer him on the day before Halloween. It's an odd choice. And they are again doing it in a rainstorm. So they arrive. There's a team of two paramedics and two caretakers who arrive to transfer Michael. They go inside. There's a guard who warns them who they're picking up and tells them a little bit of his history. They get to the doctor who's releasing Michael. The One of the caretakers goes to inspect Michael and his arm falls off the bed, seemingly accidental, and you would see Michael's hand, which does seem to show burn marks because he had been set on fire at the end of the second movie. He is also heavily bandaged on the bed, so you cannot see his face. They note here that Michael is still Dr. Loomis's patient, so we do know that Dr. Loomis is still alive, and he also survived the fire at the end of the second movie. So they load Michael into the ambulance, and Dr. Hoffman looks relieved to have Michael out of his care. There is an odd moment where he's looking through the window of the ambulance, and it almost seems like he knows something's about to happen. They drive away, and one of the caretakers asks if Michael has any living relatives, and the other caretaker does note that he has a niece living in Haddonfield, but she's a child and incapable of being Michael's guardian. This information seems to immediately make Michael stir. He clenches his fist, then he wakes up, grabs the attendant who had said it, bashes his head against the wall of the ambulance a couple times, and then drives his thumb through his forehead. We are next introduced to Jamie Lloyd, who is the daughter of Laurie Strode, the Laurie Strode from the original movie. We find out that Lori and her husband had passed away 11 months prior to the events of this movie in an undisclosed accident. We don't know how they died. Jamie is now living with the Carruthers family, who used to hire Lori to babysit their daughter Rachel. Rachel comes down and finds Jamie on the couch and puts her back to bed. Right away, there's something odd with Jamie. She seems to be having visions related to Michael. When she's on the couch looking out the window, she sees the ambulance from Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium, and it then goes away. As soon as she gets back to her room, she starts to see visions of Michael. We see his reflection in the mirror. She goes into the closet and looks at pictures of her mother. One of these pictures, notably, is clearly Laurie Strode from the 1978 movie. And when she goes to say her prayers and get ready for bed, she hears a noise, and there's a hand that reaches out and goes to pull her under the bed. She then sees Michael Myers come out from under the bed and come to start chasing her. She screams, and the Carruthers come running into the room to comfort her, and of course, Michael's not there. So these were just visions she was having, but she seems immediately to have a connection with Michael. We next see Dr. Loomis, who is showing the scars of his last encounter with Michael. He shows burn marks on his face and hand, and he's walking with a cane. He is at the Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium, and he's there to confront Dr. Hoffman. He's very upset because he knows that Michael is out, and he wants to know who made the decision to transfer Michael and why Dr. Loomis wasn't consulted about this. And Dr. Hoffman tells him that Michael being there was under federal jurisdiction and had to be treated like any other federal prisoner. They get a call about the ambulance being found, and they immediately go to the scene. And Dr. Loomis is upset. He asks how many bodies were found, and they say they can't be sure because they're in pieces, and then other bodies may have been projected out of the vehicle, so they have to search. Dr. Loomis knows Michael's still alive and he's gotten away. Dr. Hoffman does make an interesting note here that after sitting for 10 years, Michael's muscles should be useless. But Dr. Loomis simply says that Michael is no longer human. That part of him died years before. So Dr. Loomis is decided to head to Haddonfield right away because he knows that's where Michael's going to be headed. He gets in a car and he drives and he gets to a local service station. Michael had gotten here before him and he kills the mechanic to get a new blue jumpsuit. And Dr. Loomis arrives. He finds the dead mechanic. He sees a dead waitress behind the counter and he then sees Michael. They have a bit of a standoff and he tries to tell Michael to leave the people of Haddonfield alone. When he tries to pull his gun to take a shot at Michael, Michael has launched out of the room and he tries to go out to his car, but Michael breaks out of the garage, setting the gas pump on fire, destroying Dr. Loomis's car and stranding him, and also taking out the telephone pole. And Michael now has a vehicle. He's again driving with good skill and headed straight for Haddonfield. So at this point, it is Halloween Day, 1988, and the Carothers tell their daughter Rachel that she needs to babysit Jamie that night because their babysitter that they had planned cancels. She's upset because she had planned a date but reluctantly agrees. She asks Jamie if she wants to trick or treat that night. Jamie says no, at least until she goes to school and she's mocked by some very cruel children who are making fun of her for being an orphan and for having an uncle who is the literal boogeyman. And when she leaves school very upset, she goes to Rachel and tells her that she does want to indeed get a Halloween costume and go trick-or-treating like the other children. And so they go to the discount store where her boyfriend works. She tells her boyfriend that she's not going to be able to go on their date, and he's very upset. Jamie picks a costume. It's a clown costume. Ironically, that's the same kind of costume that Michael Myers was wearing on the night that he murdered his sister in 1963. She even has a vision of a young Michael wearing the costume in the mirror when she's looking at herself in the mirror. And as it turns out, Michael is in the costume store as well. We see a mask that looks like his hanging on the shelf in the background. We see him grab it and don it, and we do need to talk about this mask. This mask is horrible, but I do like the fact that it is bought from a discount store. This is the worst mask in the franchise by far. Let's just get that straight. Michael's mask from the original movie is pretty awesome, and it goes up and down from there. Some of the movies have better ones, some of them have worse. This is by far the worst mask in all of the movies. It just seems so bland, expressionless in a bad way. It has prominent eyebrows. It just doesn't look right. The face is weird. He also tucks it in, so it makes it look like he has no neck. I don't know. The whole thing doesn't project fear. It's just kind of odd looking. And again, I call this Michael Myers in this movie the necklace Michael Myers because it just looks weird. It looks like he's a head on shoulders. Just an odd look for Michael in this whole movie in general. But as I said, perhaps this can be explained away a little bit by the fact that Michael got this version of his mask from a bargain discount store. And so next we do see Dr. Loomis trying to walk to Haddonfield and trying to hitchhike. We see one car drive past, a car of teenagers pretend to stop and pick him up and then drive off. And then an old man in a rickety pickup truck picks him up. He seems to be a priest wearing priest clothes. He said he is there searching to battle evil, and he thought that Dr. Loomis was on the same mission, and Dr. Loomis is. He is trying to stop an evil force. So he shares the ride and a drink and gets his way to Haddonfield. Jamie and Rachel head out for trick or treating, and Jamie's having fun. She even joins up with a group of other kids at one house. At the house, Rachel does see her boyfriend with another woman. She's very upset, understandably, and gets distracted as Jamie continues on with a group of other children. She loses sight of her and has to start looking for her around the streets. We do see Dr. Loomis arrive to town and go straight to the police department. He asks for the sheriff from 1978 and found out that he had retired. He meets the new sheriff and gives him the information that Michael Myers is back and he is in the town and he needs his help. After a little bit, the sheriff does reluctantly agree and heads out to help Dr. Loomis start looking for Michael and tells the deputy to indeed call the news station to broadcast and tell people to close all businesses and to return to their homes to be as safe as possible. As this broadcast goes out, there's some people at the bar that are very concerned and they try to call the police station but don't get an answer and they immediately set out to try to figure out what's going on. So we kind of have an angry mom forming trying to figure out what's going on in town tonight. We see Michael go to the power station and confront one of the employees there. And when the man tells him he's going to go call the police, Michael grabs him and, in a feat of great strength, picks him up and launches him into the transformer, blowing it and taking out the power for the town of Haddonfield. We see Rachel looking for Jamie and Jamie looking for Rachel, and Rachel sees what looks like to be a Michael walking towards her, so she runs and launches herself over a fence. She does find Jamie, and then Dr. Loomis and the sheriff pull up, finding them and tell them they need to come with them. They then do see Michael in the distance, and the sheriff asks if that's him, and Dr. Loomis says yes, but then two other people in Michael masks appear surrounding them. It's not until Dr. Loomis tries to take a shot at these teenagers that they reveal who they are. They're just some teenagers playing a prank and they run off. They head back to the police station where they see that the police station has been destroyed by Michael and at least one deputy has been killed, and we assume that two others that were there have been killed as well. And then the mob does arrive and they ask what's going on, and Dr. Loomis informs them that Michael Myers is back in town. The sheriff is upset because there's now an angry mob out looking for him, but Dr. Loomis says they need all the help they can get. The mob does, in fact, encounter someone they see who they think is Michael, and they shoot him, but it is not Michael, it is another person that they have now killed in error. We had also before this seen Michael at the Carruthers house, and he saw the pictures of Laurie Strode, confirming that this is her daughter that he's after. There was a sheriff's deputy that got left there to wait for them to get home and wait for the two children to get home. The sheriff at this point radios this deputy and tells him to meet them at the sheriff's house. And he does. We then see Michael is hiding in the back seat of the deputy's car. So they begin to gather at the sheriff's home. And I don't know what sheriffs get paid in small towns, but this sheriff has a very large home. Rachel's boyfriend was there with the sheriff's daughter. This is the other woman that he was with, and they quickly get themselves together from what they were planning to do when the others start to arrive. The sheriff comes in and tells Brady, Rachel's boyfriend, to go up to the attic and start to secure the windows. He tells his daughter to secure windows on this area. And when the deputy arrives, he tells him to get his gun out of the car. He goes to get it and he notices that the back seat is open, but that doesn't seem to concern him very much at all. He just closes it and goes back inside. The sheriff tells him to guard the front doors. That's the only way in or out. Brady's up in the attic and he is starting to secure the windows. He hears some noises, and it does appear that Michael is already in the house. We don't know if he came in through the attic or found another way in, but he is inside. The sheriff has his daughter making coffee. Him and Loomis are in the basement on a radio powered by battery trying to make an emergency call to the state police to get some help. And this is where things all start to go bad. Rachel and Jamie are upstairs resting in a room. When Jamie falls asleep, Rachel comes downstairs and asks the deputy what they're going to do and when they can go home. He says they have to wait for the state police to come. When she moves, the we see Michael standing in the background. The sheriff and Dr. Loomis do eventually reach the police from the neighboring town, who say that they will call the state police on their behalf and they'll need some more information, so to stand by the radio. Dr. Loomis heads out and says he's going to head to the Carruthers house where he thinks Michael would head next. We see Rachel have a confrontation in the kitchen with the sheriff's daughter, who was trying to steal her boyfriend, and after this she heads down to the basement where the sheriff hears some trouble over the radio, and so he decides to head out to try to see what he can do and asks Rachel to stand by the radio and wait for the alert that the state police are on their way, and then to go tell Deputy Logan when she does. So that we then see the sheriff's daughter heading over to take some coffee to Deputy Logan by the front door. We see someone rocking in the rocking chair. She goes to light a candle, but then sees that Deputy Logan is dead in the corner. His body looks mangled, and it is indeed Michael in the rocking chair. He stands up, he's holding the deputy's shotgun, and he uses this to impale the sheriff's daughter. Rachel hears the alert and comes upstairs and tries to warn Deputy Logan that the state police are on their way. And then she sees that the sheriff's daughter is dead and Deputy Logan is dead. And so she, in a panic, runs upstairs to find Jamie. Jamie had awoken and had wandered off, so she doesn't see her and she's panicked and she runs into Brady. He says they need to try to get out of there. So they run for the door. It's locked and the key is missing. And he tries to shoot it, but it's a metal door, so they can't get through. They head up the stairs and they find Jamie at the top, and then they spot Michael down in the living room, and Michael begins his slow ascent up the stairs. Jamie and Rachel begin to run, and Brady decides to try to shoot Michael. However, it was a gun that only has two shells, and he tries to reload. He takes a long time trying to reload, but he is panicking, and Michael is walking very slowly up the stairs and constantly stops to turn and look at Rachel and Jamie. He does finally get close enough to Brady, and Brady tries to shoot him, but Michael deflects it and takes the gun and drops it over the rail and attacks Brady. Brady is then killed by Michael when he lifts him up by his neck and appears to crush his neck with his fingers. Jamie and Lori make it into the attic where they start to try to barricade the attic by throwing things down the stairs. And this is actually kind of a funny scene watching Michael try to climb over their barricade slowly. It does slow Michael down enough that they are able to get to a window and they climb out onto the roof, Jamie on Rachel's back. They climb up to the top and Michael also climbs onto the roof and he tries to attack Jamie and Rachel. Jamie gets down to the chimney and Rachel ends up falling and slamming into the chimney and tries to start lowering Jamie down, and then she herself falls off the roof, lands on the ground. Jamie manages to slowly get to the down and try to wake her up, and then Michael, with incredible speed for someone who moves so slowly, gets from the roof down to the ground, and Jamie runs away, leaving Rachel on the ground, Michael in slow pursuit. She eventually runs into Dr. Loomis in the street, who says they need to get out of there. He says he can't take her home because that's the first place Michael would look, so instead he takes her to the school. They go into the school and start looking for somewhere to hide, but Michael quickly appears in the school. An odd thing here is that he is now wearing a blonde mask, but only for a brief moment. The blonde mask has pinkish skin, and doing a little bit looking into this, it appears that this was just an error that made it into the movie. The prop team used the wrong mask for the filming of this scene, and they didn't have the budget to go back and correct it, so it just ended up making it into the final cut of the movie. Michael takes Dr. Loomis and throws him through a door in the school and then begins to pursue Jamie. When he pursues her, he's back to wearing his normal mask for this movie. Rachel makes it into the school, sprays Michael with a fire extinguisher, and then makes it outside where the mob of angry townspeople have arrived. They say they're going to go in and get Michael, but she says, no, the state police are coming. We just need to get out of town. And they all agree to just leave. They start to drive out of Haddonfield, and they do encounter the state police on their way. They speak to one of the state police cruisers who stops to meet them and tells them to keep going down the road where they will meet a state police station where there are officers there waiting to protect them. So they begin driving, but somehow in the mix of all this, Michael had attached himself to the bottom of the car and he climbs up over the bed and he kills the three men in the bed of the car. He stabs one, stabs the other, throws them out of the vehicle, and then picks up the other man and throws him out of the moving vehicle. He then climbs onto the roof of the cab and he reaches in and kills Earl by ripping his throat out with his hand. Rachel takes control of the vehicle by pushing him out of the car and starts driving and trying to swerve back and forth to keep Michael off balance as he's trying to reach in and grab her. Eventually, she does stop, flinging Michael off the truck and onto the ground, and she guns it forward and hits him with the truck, launching him through a fence. And this does seem to stun him for the moment. He drops his knife, or at least opens his grip around the knife handle. Jamie seems intrigued looking at Michael at this point, and as the police and everybody else starts to arrive, she has approached Michael and actually touches his hand. They yell at her to get away, and she stands up and starts walking away, and Michael wakes up and sits up and looks at Jamie, and they tell her to duck out of the way, and she does, and they all begin to shoot Michael numerous times over and over again, and eventually he is launched backwards and appears to fall into what looks like a well, and the ground around him collapses in on top of him. We then see everybody return to the Carruthers house, bringing Jamie and Rachel back to their parents. The sheriff is there, Dr. Loomis is there, and he says they've survived this night, so they'll survive the memory of it. Mrs. Carruthers goes to take Jamie upstairs to get her ready for bed, and she's drawing her a bath, and then we see Jamie don her clown mask for her costume, a scene eerily similar to the 1978 movie, and she grabs a pair of scissors and she goes in and attacks Mrs. Carruthers, and we don't know if Mrs. Carruthers at this point survives this attack. We then see Jamie in her clown costume at the top of the stairs, gripping a bloody pair of scissors, and her eyes notably look very dark in this scene. Dr. Loomis is immediately stricken into a panic. He starts screaming, "No, no, no," and even tries to take a shot at Jamie before being stopped by the sheriff, and we have to assume that Dr. Loomis, in his mind, is panicked. He thinks that it's all beginning again, the cycle is starting all over again, and that Jamie is going to become the next Michael Myers, and so that's why he tried to take the shot to stop her. And this is how the movie ends. Halloween 4 is a grand return to the Halloween franchise, and it's as it should be again, with Michael Myers on a Halloween night killing spree. There was a 6 year gap between Halloween's 3 and 4, and a 10-year gap between the original movie and Halloween 4. This actually works out quite well because it's the 10-year anniversary of Michael's original killing spree, and he's at it again. This movie, of course, has its ups and downs. I do not like the way Michael looks in this movie. As I stated earlier in the video, I don't like his mask in this movie. It's too plain and bland and just doesn't look right. I don't like his general look either. He just is a little bit odd looking in this movie compared to the other movies. But other than that, it's a pretty strong Halloween film. We have Michael Myers back. We have Dr. Loomis back. We don't have Laurie Strode. We find out her character has died, and she has a daughter, Jamie Lloyd, who is the new target of Michael's attention, and that gives him motive. In the first movie in 1978, it didn't really seem like Michael had motive. He just escaped from the sanitarium he was in and went back to his hometown to continue killing as he started when he was a kid. In part two, we do learn that he does have motive. In fact, he knows that Laurie Strode is his sister and he is out to kill his second sister as he did the first. In this movie, when he is leaving the sanitarium and he hears the ambulance drivers talking about his niece. That's what seems to awaken him and reinvigorate him, and he knows that he has more work to do, and so he breaks free and is heading back to Haddonfield. And in this movie, we do see a different character side of Michael in that he seems much more aggressive and determined to make sure that nothing stands in his way. In the previous movies, such as the first movie, we see Michael just kind of goes about his business without trying to draw attention to himself to do what he's there to do. In the second movie, same thing. He's going about his business. He finds out where he needs to go, gets to the hospital, and is sneaking around the hospital until enough people are gone that he can move about freely. He does take out the phones to the hospital, which showed some planning on his part. This movie seems to have a lot more planning. Again, he kind of takes out the long distance phone lines to the town, although we're not sure if that's incidental or on purpose when he breaks free of the gas station and blows up the gas pump, which takes out the telephone poles. And Michael is just determined, as we said, to prevent anything from getting in his way. In this movie, he pretty much takes out the entire police force as well as the power to all of Haddonfield. So Michael has no problem moving about, getting everything done, trying to get to Jamie and making sure nobody stands in his way to accomplish this goal. I just find that interesting. Another interesting part is Jamie Lloyd. From the beginning of the movie, she seems to have some sort of a connection to Michael. She has visions of him in the beginning, sees the ambulance that he's broken out of, sees visions of him in her room, and sees visions of him as a child in the costume store. So there seems to be some sort of link between Jamie and Michael. And at the end of the movie, she does touch Michael, and I don't know if this does trigger something because when she goes back to the house, that's when she does don her mask as Michael did as a child and attack her foster mother. This is a very odd thing. It just seems like she's linked to Michael in some sort of way and perhaps heading down a similar path as it might be indicated at the end. Michael's kill count is up in this movie. In the first movie, he had killed 5 people, and the second movie, he had killed 9. Combining those, there was a total of 14 people he killed on Halloween night 1978. 10 years later, his numbers are up. He kills a total of 17 people in this movie. And to run through them, first he killed attendant Jay Black by driving his thumb through his forehead, and then he kills the 3 other people in the ambulance off screen. We don't see how. Next, he kills the mechanic at the auto garage to steal his jumpsuit. He impales him with a metal rod. He next kills the waitress, but we don't know how. He kills Bucky, who is the worker at the power plant, by throwing him into the transformer, electrocuting him. Next, he kills Deputy Pierce. We don't know how, but we see his dead and ripped apart body at the police station. And then there's some assumption here. We assume he killed the 2 other deputies who were at the sheriff's station, but we don't see their bodies, and it's not confirmed. Next, he kills Deputy Logan at the sheriff's house by mangling him. He just seems that his body is very messed up. He then kills the sheriff's daughter, Kelly Meeker. He impales her through the chest with a shotgun, pinning her up against the wall. He then kills Brady by seemingly snapping his neck. He had also seemed to be pushing his fingers into his face. Next, he kills 3 people in the back of Earl Ford's truck, Orrin Gateway, Alan Gateway, and Unger. He stabs Orrin and throws him off the truck. He stabs Alan and throws him off the truck, and he picks up Unger and throws him off the moving truck. And the last person that Michael kills in the movie is Earl Ford by ripping open his neck with his bare hands, for a total of 17 kills. There is an additional kill in the movie. Ted Hollister is killed, but he is killed by members of the angry mob: Earl Ford, Alan Gateway, Orrin Gateway, and Unger. So this death is in the movie, but not one that's attributed to Michael. So as far as things go, Michael's kills are climbing. For scores, this movie was not that well received by critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it gets a critic score of only 33%, giving it a rotten score, and the audience score is only a 53%, giving it a rotten score there as well. Over on IMDb, the movie gets a 5.8 out of 10. I personally have always liked this movie as part of the Halloween franchise and always enjoy watching it. I feel that this was a good return to the series, a good way to bring Michael Myers back. I loved his meticulous attack on the town in order to get what he needs to get done. I don't like his mask, as I've stated, or the way he appears in the movie in general, but overall, I find the movie is very solid, and I score it at a much higher 7.5 out of 10. So that is my review of 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Please give me your thoughts on this movie in the comment section, and please be sure to like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next video coming soon, which will be Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.